Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse, the Thursday, April 3rd edition of the Daily Pulse. I'm your host, Teddy Panos, coming to you from the WellPoint Studios here in beautiful, albeit wet and dreary, downtown Lowell on this Thursday, April 3rd. Joined today in studios, well, this is such a big show that I've not only one empty chair, but two empty chairs. Yeah, that's right. You got to deal with me for a little bit. It's a thrilling Thursday edition of the Daily Pulse, as I like to call it. How thrilling it is, I can't tell you, but I promise I'm going to keep this one short. I know I say that all the time when I'm here by myself, but this one will be pretty short. It's pretty tailored to the big panic and the big scare out there. And yes, 𝐓𝐡𝐫𝐢𝐥𝐲, I am dedicating this episode to you based on our discussion yesterday, and because you couldn't come in today, you were actually working. And you couldn't come in and have this discussion with me. But I want to kind of talk a little bit about what Donald Trump termed as Liberation Day yesterday, the day he enacted tariffs on countries across the world, and people are either losing their minds over it or praising it to the hills because it's the greatest thing since sliced bread and American Industry Liberation Day. I just want to lay out a little bit of history, point out some facts that you're not getting to see, and then encourage you to go out and actually look at this stuff and study this stuff for yourself before you get ensnared and engulfed in the panic that seems to strike, well, pretty much everything Donald Trump does these days. It's not all good. It's not all bad. It's usually somewhere in the middle, and some of it just might work if you give it a little bit of try. And that's what I want to talk about today. First, let me quickly thank our Daily Pulse sponsors. Of course, Ray Booten, licensed realtor in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, certified appraiser in both states as well. You can find him online at realestaterayBooten.com, and he's got a brand new listing in Hudson today. We'll be telling you about that on Inside Lowell's Facebook page. Thank you as well to our friends at WellPoint. WellPoint is the only health plan offering healthcare benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. And today, April 3rd, is day 2 of the open enrollment period here in Massachusetts. Anybody insured under the state's GIC, Group Insurance Commission, so that's city workers, town workers, state workers, county workers, whoever. If you want to switch your plan, here is your chance. Go to WellPoint, check out their plans. If you're not already using them, this is a great opportunity to find out why they are a leader the leader, I should say, in Massachusetts in terms of offering group insurance. If you're currently with WellPoint and your life circumstances have changed, you can explore their plans and find one that might be more cost-effective for you or more effective. Are you starting a family? Are you nearing retirement and your family's all grown and you want to make a change? Explore their plans, talk to their team. They'll be happy to explain it all to you. We've got some other sponsors I want to thank as well, and I'll get to them in a few minutes. But first, let's kick it off. As I mentioned, is setting this show up, tariffs, Liberation Day. I want to just kind of share a little bit my point of view on this. And again, I encourage you, go out, listen to what I have to say. Obviously, you're watching this. I come from a point with, I'm old enough to have lived some history. I'm old enough to have debated that history while it was current events. And I'm old enough to admit when I was wrong about that history and those current events. Let me take you back to kind of the first thing that got America into this economic decline for the middle class, which I will also point out to you with the help of some friends and a little bit of our technology here with videos from other shows. First of all, let's go back to February 1st, 1980. That was the day that China was granted MFN status, Most Favored Nation status. That is the day, 8 years or so after Richard Nixon's ping-pong diplomacy opened the doors to communist China and relationships between the two governments. February 1st, 1980, the United States granted Most Favored Nation status to China, thereby setting the wheels in motion for what would really be a tremendous decline in the middle class in the United States of America and in middle class wealth, which we all, right, conservatives, progressives, the Bernie bros, the Donald Trump people, you want to grow the wealth of the United States of America. The trick is, how do you do it? What's the right way? What's the wrong way? What's the insane way to do it? And I would venture to say the insane way is to keep doing what we're doing since 1980, where China was granted most favored nation status and thereby allowed to trade with the United States of America and ultimately Americans to be able to buy Chinese products. Then I wanted to, the next moment in history where by 1980 I was too young. I didn't know enough. By 1992, I was a little older. I'd like to think a little wiser, 26 years old, approaching my 27th birthday, when a gentleman named Ross Perot mounted the last serious independent presidential campaign. He got over 20% of the vote in the race against Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush, the elder. And a big issue of Ross Perot's campaign was trade, quote unquote, free trade, and the incoming NAFTA trade agreement, North American Free Trade Agreement, which was going to open up trade between the United States and Mexico and Canada. And again, they told us just increase prosperity for all Americans. And it didn't do that either, which again, I will show you. But Ross Perot debated this. It was the first question of the 1992 presidential debate, which I'm going to play for you. And also in 1994, when the NAFTA agreement was about to be voted on and signed and adopted, there was a debate on CNN. Larry King was the evening talk show host then, 9 p.m. with Larry King, and he organized a debate between Ross Perot and the sitting vice president, Al Gore, where they debated NAFTA. And the consensus after the debate was that Al Gore cleaned Ross Perot's clock on the debate about NAFTA. I said the same thing. I watched that debate and I said, man, Perot's an idiot. He's wrong. Gore's right. This is going to open everything up and increase wealth in America and around the world. America will benefit from global wealth and everything that comes with it. I said that Ross Perot got his clock cleaned. That was my analysis back then of that debate in 1994, by the time I was now 28 years old, approaching my 29th birthday. I was wrong. Ross Perot was right. Ross Perot was right in 1992. He was right in 1994, and I was too stupid to understand it. But I was also too blindfolded and programmed by that point what had become a globalist movement of, it sounds great, free trades and eventually open borders and all this wonderful stuff that history we're now looking at a little bit differently. But I was blinded by it. And I'm not too stubborn. I am stubborn, but I'm not too stubborn to admit that I was wrong. Ross Perot was right. I'm going to play you a little clip from that 1992 debate. On stage, you'll see George H.W. Bush, the incumbent president, Bill Clinton, the man who would beat him and become president, and then Ross Perot, the man who tried to warn us about what would happen with NAFTA. And it's a short clip. You can actually go on YouTube and watch the whole debate if you want longer clips, but I picked this shorter one right here because I think it's important. Take a listen back. This is in 1992, first presidential debate, very first question, and Ross Perot is answering it.
We have got to stop sending jobs overseas. To those of you in the audience who are business people, pretty simple. If you're paying $12, $13, $14 an hour for factory workers, and you can move your factory south of the border, pay $1 an hour for labor, hire a young 25, that's assuming you've been in business for a long time, you've got a mature workforce. Pay $1 an hour for your labor, have no health care, that's the most expensive single element, making a car, have no environmental controls, no pollution controls, and no retirement, and you don't care about anything but making money, there will be a giant sucking sound going south. So if the people send me to Washington, the first thing I'll do is study that 2,000-page agreement and make sure it's a two-way street.
So the sound bite that everybody remembers from that and now keeps throwing up is the giant sucking sound, which even earned laughs from the audience and some guffaws from President Bush and soon to be President Clinton. But Ross Perot was right. He said the giant sucking sound you hear is American jobs going across the border, specifically Mexico. But did you catch the issues that Ross Perot was talking about? He was talking about wages. What American factory wages were versus what international factory wages were, and how you were going to undercut American jobs, which, by the way, we started to do again with our free trade agreements in Asia. Now, you could say, in Japan and Thailand and Cambodia and these countries, well, we were involved in so many wars over there, helped ruin those countries that we were trying to be fair with them and help lift them up. But China, communist China, we're allowing them they're getting most favored nation status and flooding our markets here in America, undercutting Americans with American workers. That the giant sucking sound wasn't just to Mexico. It had already started. Ross Perot knew that history and was trying to warn us that NAFTA was going to make it even worse, but we didn't listen. We got sold a bill of goods. It was buried into our heads by the nonstop media coverage and so-called experts who were wrong. We've now seen what's happened to the American middle class. We've now seen what's happened to the American factory worker because of NAFTA and these other trade policies. But Perot wasn't just talking about wealth and wages. He was talking about health insurance, right? Health insurance is now a big deal. Remember Obamacare and everything we're battling to this day. It's about having companies providing health insurance to their workers so they wouldn't have to get on government health care and bankrupt the system and drive it all out of whack. Perot's talking about this in 1992. He was smart. He warned you. He told you what was coming. He told me what was coming. And I was too dumb to listen. He was talking about the environment. All you environmentalists out there, all my friends, right? Save the planet. He's telling you, you're shipping jobs, you're shipping manufacturing, you're shipping production to countries who don't care about these things, who don't have the same standards that the United States of America had been starting to implement after from the 70s forward. In 1992, Perot's trying to tell you, he's warning you about all this stuff. He's tied it all together. These are the same discussions that are being had today. Except now we have them from a reference point where we realize, oh shit, we really did screw the American middle class. How much did we screw them? I'm going to show you that in a minute too. But I want to show you one more clip. And this was from a Bill Maher episode, Bill Maher show, if you watch it on HBO. Just a few weeks ago, and the guest, 𝐓𝐡𝐫𝐢𝐥𝐲 𝐏 is her name. And they were debating the tariffs, the same tariffs that everybody's losing their mind over today. And Bill Maher, this was before Bill Maher went to the White House for lunch with Kid Rock just a couple of days ago. I'll be curious to see his show this weekend. But this was before then, and Bill Maher was kind of very derisive in that discussion about tariffs. And you'll see it at the beginning when 𝐓𝐡𝐫𝐢𝐥𝐲 𝐏 started talking. She said, I want to address the tariffs and I want to go back to the 70s and tell you something. And she put out an interesting little statistic that I'm going to highlight for you in a quick second. But I want you to watch this clip and watch somebody intelligent. Maybe she's wrong. Maybe she's right, but she's far more eloquent than I am and far more knowledgeable because I did not know this stuff. And I've referred to this discussion on previous Daily Pulses, but listen to what 𝐓𝐡𝐫𝐢𝐥𝐲 𝐏 explained to Bill Maher and others. And by the end, Bill Maher's like, well, yeah, it's like you've stated a reason why tariffs may not be the death knell of the American economy and the American citizen who will be bankrupted by them. Bear with me for a second here. We're going to take Mr. Ross Perot off our screen here. And here is 𝐓𝐡𝐫𝐢𝐥𝐲 𝐏 on the Bill Maher show a couple of weeks ago.
I want to answer the question about manufacturing in the 70s.
Oh, I don't blame you. I'll go back to that
So the reason people want to go back to the 70s is in the 70s, the largest share of our GDP was in the middle class. And that was not separate from the fact that 25% of our economy was in manufacturing.
Right, the largest share of our GDP.
Was in the middle class, the biggest chunk, the middle class,
most
people
of
who
what
are
was
middle
produced
income.
came from the middle, and now it
Yes.
comes from what? The rich.
Now, the top 20% controls over 50% of the GDP. Our economy was an upward funnel of wealth, and the largest share, which used to be in manufacturing, which gave a lot of working class people a middle class standard of living, now the largest share is in real estate and finance, meaning that asset-rich Americans are controlling over 50% of the GDP, and they have left the working class out of all of that prosperity that was generated. That manufacturing is still being done. It's just being done in other countries. It is still
For wages we will not work for.
That's exactly right. You're right, Bill. That's what the tariffs are for. They are to make American workers more competitive in the global market. Why are we accepting that there should be a race to the bottom? You know, China, what is its competitive advantage over us? It's that it pays slave wages. Why should we accept that? They're still manufacturing our PPE, our pharmaceuticals, our cars. They're making all that stuff. Trump says there are 5 industries that we cannot have any kind of national security without having a stake in them. Pharmaceuticals, lumber, steel, aluminum, and I forget what the 5th one was. But these are really important, that we have a stake in the manufacturing of the things that we need as a nation, so that when China decides that it wants to go to war against us, we're not relying on them for steel and aluminum in order to fight them.
Okay, well, at least that's an answer.
All right, there you heard it. We're all aware of this problem, right? The wealth disparity, and I've got a graph for you that I'll show you how the top 1%, the top 10%, how their wealth has grown exponentially, while the middle class is getting wealth sucked out of it. But she told you the GDP of the United States of America, the gross domestic product, most of the production, most of the wealth in the United States in the 70s was controlled by the middle class, over 60%. I think she said 67, but you know, if my number's off, you know, forgive me, but she told you what happened and where it is now. And she's telling you how these important industries, steel, aluminum, hell, pharmaceuticals, 95% of the ibuprofen produced in the world is made in China. Remember there was a shortage of like kids' ibuprofen, moms and dads? You remember this from a couple of years ago. It was hard to find kids' ibuprofen. China's controlling that. It's suicidal for us to have one of our sworn enemies, a communist, Marxist, totalitarian regime that oppresses people and puts people into slavery, the Uyghur population into slavery, that has kids working in sweatshops for less than $1 an hour, to allow them to control our pharmaceuticals? It's suicidal. It's nuts. She's spelling it out for you. And by the end, the person you saw nodding next to 𝐓𝐡𝐫𝐢𝐥𝐥𝐢, I believe, was Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. Even at one point, he kind of nodded like, yeah, that makes sense. And even Bill Maher at the end said, well, there's a reason, there's an argument for tariffs. Again, will it work? Will what Donald Trump is doing work? I think it will, but there's no guarantees, right? They told us NAFTA was going to work. I told you NAFTA was going to work in 1994, and it didn't. I was wrong. You know, but I do know that if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, that's the definition of insanity. Do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. We can't keep doing what we've been doing since the 70s. Can't keep doing what we've been doing since we gave China most favored nation status in 1980. Can't be doing what we continue to do and allow countries to put tariffs on our products going out while undercutting our workers and our wealth so that we could buy cheaper products. Yeah, you're buying cheaper products, but at what cost? You're making less money. Your percentage of the wealth has gone down. Your ability, your upward mobility in the economy and your ability to purchase these products is severely hampered so that you can have a 99-cent toy from China? I mean, let's at least have a legitimate discussion about how this could work, if it could work, and give it a shot and see what comes of it. Give you a couple of minutes. I want to show you some graphs, though, that highlight this and why I personally believe it's not a bad idea to try to level the playing field. And if you want to trade with the United States of America, we got to trade on an equal playing field. Because I believe that the American worker and that this country, the United States of America, our infrastructure, our wealth, our knowledge, and our people can, if we are forced to compete with other countries, we will win. On a level playing field, we will beat them. If the playing field isn't level, then we may lose. And I think you're seeing us in the process of losing. I'll show you what I mean by that. Quickly, let me just thank our Daily Pulse sponsors again. Remind you, you're watching the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse on this Thursday, April 3rd, 2025. Want to thank Ray Booten, licensed realtor, certified appraiser in both Massachusetts and New Hampshire. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home, a business, or a commercial property, Real Estate Ray Booten is your man. Find him online, realestaterayBooten.com. Thanks as well to our friends at WellPoint. We're here in the WellPoint studios, as you can see by all the signage around me, even the signage behind my audience here. Very faithful audience. They're listening. They're not interrupting on this thrilling Thursday. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. Thanks as well to our friends at TMI Properties, quality and value at every price point. Find your perfect space with TMI. Washington Savings Bank, banking that feels like home. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection to Greater Lowell and Southern New Hampshire since 1925. The Greater Lowell Community Foundation, improving the quality of life in Greater Lowell and Southern in Greater Lowell, I should say, through impactful strategic philanthropy. Not in Southern New Hampshire, but they benefit from our quality of life. Francis E. Preventure Insurance, the agency Greater Lowell has counted on to insure its most valued assets since 1982. And by the Massachusetts Pirates, bringing all the hard-hitting action and excitement of arena football to the Mill City. All right, back to wrap up our tariffs discussion here and just show you a couple of other charts. And again, I encourage everybody, try to look at this for yourself. Forget the hysteria, forget the panic mongering, forget the cheerleading. All right, so whether it's the Trump people cheerleading this, whether it's the Trump opposition, the resistance, panic mongering, fear mongering it. Try to listen to people who understand economics on a bigger scale. Like I maybe should have listened to Ross Perot in 1992 and 1994. Try to listen to them, okay? Fox Business will give you some decent analysis. CNBC will give you some decent analysis. Drown out the talking heads who are paid advocates, those who worked for the Trump administration or worked for the Biden and Obama administration, because they're gonna give you their talking points. They're gonna spin it their way. Try to get some legitimate analysis, and there's a lot to be had. And you can find it online. You can find it on X, Twitter. You can find it in other places. There are legitimate economic and financial sites that will give you a reasoned analysis and a logical reasoning for both sides, whether you think the tariffs are a good idea or whether you think they're a bad idea. And try to make up your mind. But here's why I think it's a good idea. I pointed out Ross Perot and how I should have listened to him because he was right, okay? That same argument is carrying over into the pro-tariffs. And I think this time I'm more willing to listen and believe them. But also you heard Batya Ungar-Sargon, and she explained to you how the wealth, again, that giant sucking sound, the wealth just sucking out of the middle class of America and going elsewhere, specifically to China. But let's call up a chart here. And again, we're going to have Bill Maher go away. And we're going to bring in what I've dubbed the income disparity graph. Now, this data, just so you know, was as of 2018. Okay, and so I'm willing to bet that post-pandemic and in the ensuing 7 years, these numbers have only accentuated. These trends have only gotten worse, right? The global pandemic, and because you'll hear politicians on every side will tell you the top 1% are gaining more wealth. Everybody else is losing wealth. Well, so look at 1970, okay? 3 different levels: upper income, middle income, and lower income. Now, the lower income people, between what their their household wages were, you see it not much of a difference, right? Between 1970 and 2018. And you can see that cyan blue line kind of holding steady, right? They were 10% of the U.S. aggregate income in 1970. They're 9% in 2018. Is it 8% today, 7%, 11%? I don't know. But you can see that line is held steady. There's really no reason to believe that it's not holding steady. But look at the middle income. In 1970, middle income Americans, $58,100 in average household income, accounted for 62% of the United States aggregate income. Again, this is in line with what Bhatia was telling you about gross domestic product. In 2018, it's 43%. And you can see that line just slowly but gradually going downwards from 62 to 43%. And it's probably gone down from 2018 to 2025, where we are today. And then look at the upper income, right? Which in 1970, they considered those making $126,000 a year, in 2000, $192,000 a year, and $207,000 in 2018. They have gone from 29% to 48%. Now, I bet if you take that out to the top, instead of just upper income, and you take the top 10% of wage earners and the top 1% of wage earners, you're going to see that number up in the 80s/90s, which is the data that we're being given today. But, you know, they've got, this is a Pew Research Center graph here, an analysis. They say anybody making $200,000 a year is upper income, which is kind of I think it's, kind of fair. They're not the top 1%. And, in Massachusetts, $200,000 doesn't go as far as it does in Wyoming and Montana. But it's again, the point is, look at how much their wealth, the middle income, their wealth has gone down 19 percentage points as part of as a share of the aggregate U.S. income, from 62 to 43. Coincidentally, upper income has gone up 19, from 29 to 48. In other words, the upper income people, and especially the top 1%, are sucking more and more wealth out of the middle class. It's not really affecting the lower income people, right? They're kind of, if you're low income, your life sucks, whether it was 1970, 2018, or 2025. If you're middle income, you've deteriorated. If you're upper income, you're getting a little bit better share. And again, the top 1%. Now, we can debate what's the best way to cure this, right? Do you tax the bejesus out of the top 1%, as some would have it? Or do you raise the income of the middle class people? Do you create an economy where middle class people go back to where they were in 1970 on this graph, as opposed to where they are in 2018 and today? I can tell you, as Ross Perot explained to you, why I don't think taxing the 1% is going to do it for you, because you can't tax them enough to get out of the hole that we're in, both from a United States budget deficit and debt. And also, as Ross Perot explained to you, they'll just go offshore. They'll move to somewhere else, and they'll take their jobs, their production facilities, and their wealth somewhere else, and then undercut the American workers by using cheaper labor overseas to make their products more cheaply, accumulate their wealth more easily, and then in the process leave behind a ruined middle class, middle Rust Belt cities that are now empty, with all the factories and stuff shut down because it's gone elsewhere. Now, there's more to it than that, right? There's also the thing of paper money. The top 1% become the top 1% because of stocks and dividends and this kind of stuff. But if you're smart enough to play the stock market, knowing where the money is going overseas and how to bring it back more cheaply and create wealth, which these folks know. It's easier to create wealth when you start in a wealthier position, and it's easier to create paper wealth when you already have wealth. They'll do it. So, and that's why I think it might be a good approach to try to increase the middle class, the lot of life for the middle class in America. Bring these manufacturing jobs back. Will there be some pain? Some short-term pain, probably. It may not be as long as some folks are saying, though. I really think if the United States stays on this course that Donald Trump embarked on yesterday for a couple of months, maybe up to 6 months, I think the long-term gain is going to be exponential, and I think it will create a new era of wealth and maybe, just maybe, change this graph around a little bit. One more thing I want to show you here, and we'll make that graph go away, and we'll show you the tariffs. And this was put out by the White House, Trump folks, yesterday on social media. And this was, if you see the left-hand column, tariffs charged to the United States. And then on the right side, the yellow, gold, whatever it is, discounted reciprocal tariffs is how they're calling them. Now, take away the discount. They're tariffs. Donald Trump is imposing tariffs on products coming from other countries to the United States of America. Now, is it going to make costs go up? Probably. Probably. On what? We can debate that. Are you going to pay $1.50 for your little cheap dollar toy coming out of China? Sure. Other countries? Sure. Or maybe other countries, as many already have, are going to say, you know what? I don't want to get into a trade war with the United States of America. I'm going to just say, you know what? No tariffs on American products coming into our country. No tariff. If the United States says no tariffs on products from foreign countries coming into the United States of America. Free trade, right? You hear this word thrown around a lot. Free trade, NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement. Free trade. How free is the trade? China, right at the top there. They were charging a 67% tax on American products going into China. While I don't know what our tariff was, but Donald Trump is now proposing 34%, which, by the way, he did impose tariffs on Chinese products back in his first term, and it didn't seem to be the end of the economy. As a matter of fact, the share of middle class income was climbing. But free trade, how free is it when China charges 67%? Look at our friends in the European Union. 39% tariff. Trump's only going to charge them 20%. Still not a level playing field, but far more level than it was, isn't it? Look at that whole chart there. Now again, you'll see some numbers for Cambodia, 97%, Thailand, 72%. Look, I get it. You know, Japan, after World War II, the United States was interested in rebuilding the Japanese economy. After all those wars, between the war on the Korean Peninsula and the Vietnam War and the aftermath of all of that in Southeast Asia, we wanted to try to help those countries accumulate wealth and whatnot. I get it. But, you know, is it fair that American products going into Thailand are getting taxed at 72%? Doesn't sound it, does it? So Donald Trump is saying, all right, well, we're going to half that to 96. If you see Cambodia from 97, we're going to 49. He's kind of halving it. China, we're going to tax 34% because they're taxing 67. But I mean, forget China, they're our enemy, right? You can look on this chart and see it all, screen capture this, and you can see them all. But, you know, our friends, as I said, in the European Union, 39%. Our friends in Japan, 46% tariffs on U.S. goods. Our friends in Israel, 33% tariffs on American-made products going into their country, being imported or exported, in our case, from America to Israel. Even the United Kingdom is at 10% with a lot of other countries out there. That's not free trade. Free trade is zero. You don't tax our goods, we don't tax yours. Free trade. And may the best product win. May the best worker win. I wouldn't bet against the American worker. On a level playing field, Heck, even this lopsided playing field, it's still 2-to-1, the tariffs, right? What Donald Trump is proposing is, all right, we'll let you out-tariff us by a 2-to-1 ratio. I bet you we win. I bet you the American worker is far superior, far more educated, far more ambitious, and we're blessed enough to have far more resources here in the United States of America, both natural resources, both wealth, than other countries. Why would we want to export that wealth to other countries, that production to other countries, like Ross Perot told you about cars? Why would you want a car produced in another country for $1 an hour? This is his 1992 argument, when the American auto worker would do it for $14 an hour. By the way, the American auto worker is going to do it for a lot more now. Why would you want that? You're hurting the American worker. Oh, sure, by not putting a tariff on that car, the cars produced in Mexico or Korea or wherever are going to be a little bit cheaper for the American consumer. But how many American consumers can afford to buy those cars? Wouldn't it be better to have Americans making those cars, exporting them fairly to other countries without tariffs against them? American cars would fare very well in a level playing field. I believe in the United States of America. I believe in the American worker. I believe in the American ideal, the American dream. I think that in a level playing field, we can win. I think tariffs are designed to level that playing field. I think there'll be some short-term pain. I think it's exaggerated how much there will be. I think there'll be some short-term cost increases. Again, I think it's exaggerated. I'm not sure how long some of these countries on that list can afford to end up in a trade war with the United States of America. I don't think they can win. I'll put us up against Brazil, South Africa, Bangladesh, Singapore, all of these other countries. And yes, I'll put us up against China if we have free trade and they can still pay their slaves $1 an hour or nothing an hour. I think we still beat them. And I think we crush their economy. I think we bring vital manufacturing, especially in steel and aluminum and lumber. I think we bring that back to the United States of America, and we create good paying jobs, and we increase, one more time, just so you can see it, we reverse this graph and try to put more wealth into the hands of the middle income Americans, the middle class, and hopefully we can get down to those lower income and get them above, because their lot in life hasn't really gotten better or worse since 1970. You can see it there. Let's create jobs. Let's create educational opportunities that will allow even the lower income people to get up into middle class. That upward mobility that marked so much of American economic history, starting with the Industrial Revolution and going right through the golden years after World War II when the American economy was booming, before we started embarking on free trade with countries that were absolutely screwing us. All right. Again, I hope you learned a little something. Trust me, I don't know enough about this stuff to be right or wrong. Don't take my word for it. Follow people. Forget the partisan hacks, the talking heads on Fox and CNN who are paid to put out a spin, paid propagandists for whatever. Try to find some money people. Get their thoughts on this. Talk to economists. Talk to others. Again, try to find some of their, and they are out there, economists and financial people who didn't work for some president or some administration and might give you some honesty. A lot of them think that this is worth a go. A lot of them think it's going to be disastrous, and who knows, they may be right. Why do I think that it's going to ultimately prove beneficial for the United States of America? Because a businessman told me so in 1992 and again in 1994. He told me what was going to happen, and I doubted him. I thought he was full of crap. I thought he was insane. I bought the media narrative against him, hook, line, and sinker. Ross Perot is crazy. Ross Perot is this. Ross Perot is that. Do you know what we can look back on 30 years later, from 1994 to 2025, Ross Perot was right. Maybe Ross Perot was crazy. Maybe he was a bad dude. But you know what? Ross Perot was right. History has proven him right. He told you what was happening because of free trade with China. He told you how it was going to be made even worse with free trade after NAFTA. And he was right. So don't listen to me. Don't listen to, do your own research. But remember, listen to people who kind of espouse some of the same things Ross Perot did, because he was ahead of his time. He was 30 years ahead of his time. And we were too dumb. We were too brainwashed. I was too brainwashed to know different. All right. Thank you for joining us today on the Daily Pulse. Tomorrow, Friday, April 4th, we've got the Pod Squad coming in. Batch and Michaela kind of recap a week's worth of news in Lowell and the world around it, and always have some laughs with them and probably piss some folks off in the process. But anyway, I hope, sorry that I gave you no guests today other than these two chairs, which dutifully sat there very quiet, never moved, never spoke into their microphones. But I thought it was worth having this discussion, because everybody is losing their mind about quote unquote Liberation Day. Kind of dumb to call it Liberation Day, but the more serious discussion should be on, will tariffs work? Will they do what Donald Trump says they will, or will they make things worse? I hope you got a little more insight into how that is going to play out in the coming weeks, months, hopefully not years. But till next time, everybody stay safe, stay dry, and I'll catch you on the other side.